this is a segment that our producers have titled Elbows Up, which means just like totally elbows down. Mark Carney is asked how the ongoing US trade talks are proceeding. And remember when we were supposed to have a trade deal by, what was it, August 1st? What's it, the 18th? So how do you think they're going? Anyways, Mark Carney can't articulate it. Let's watch.
Prime Minister, can we get an update on how trade talks are going? How are they going?
Good morning. Bonjour.
How are trade talks going?
Look, well, actually, I'm just going to meet with Minister LeBlanc. We'll have a discussion of that and important discussion with Premier Ford this morning on a variety of aspects for the Ontario economy, the Canadian economy, which of course includes trade, but goes much more to the issues that we can control and how we build out from within.
Like what would some examples be?
Well, we'll talk about the housing sector. We'll talk about steel, auto, new sectors of the economy, including artificial intelligence. What we're doing in terms of making Canada competitive.
Making Canada competitive. Yeah, after a decade of liberal ruin that has stagnated the economy and ruined various socialized programs that used to be our social safety net, that are just crumbling under the pressure of horrible policy, including, but not limited to, unmitigated and record immigration into this country. And I noticed that he doesn't even mention the fentanyl crisis at all, and the issue that Donald Trump has taken with the fact that our porous borders have allowed for the influx of human trafficking, organized crime, the drug smuggling and drug trade networks that have formulated between the US, Canada, and Mexico. Carney was trying to deflect, I think that was a week or two ago, that this was like, first of all, he campaigned on the fact and stated during his campaign that it wasn't a crisis. Yeah, not only were his elbows up, but now they're like neatly tucked and we're kind of just doing some weird rendition of the chicken dance. But he campaigned on the fact that he said fentanyl wasn't actually a crisis here in Canada, despite killing roughly 20 Canadians every single day across the country.
And he said it in BC, where it's particularly bad, where these communities are the hardest hit. He said it in a campaign stop, like, oh, it's not a crisis. Don't worry about it. We got it handled. And it's like, he said it in BC, where your fentanyl zombies are in every small town and big city across the land.
And literally lurking outside of the school gates, just waiting to capitalize on your children with dilaudid, known by the street name Dillies. But here, you know, don't take our word for it. Here, let's listen to Carney say it for himself.
Fentanyl is an absolute crisis in the United States. It's a challenge here, but it's a crisis there. It's a challenge here, but it's a crisis.
It's a challenge.
It's a challenge. It's so much of a challenge that they haven't been able to do anything to really confront that challenge in the last several months, including after hiring an entire fentanyl czar who was supposed to get a grip on everything. So I'm surprised that he didn't mention fentanyl or that illicit illegal drug trading network at all, because Trump continues to put out in press releases and White House documentation that this is an ongoing issue for the United States. And last week, or 2 weeks ago, I think it was, Carney was saying, well, Canada's a blip compared to Mexico. And it's like, so what? Then we can just say, oh, you know what? You've got bigger fish to fry. So just ignore us little guys to the north. And it's like, no, this is obviously a problem coming in from multi facets of the United States. And like, why wouldn't you just want to get a grasp and a grip on it to benefit Canadians, not because our southern neighbors are saying, hey, this is a problem. Can you guys deal with it? We as Canadians have been saying, hey, this is a problem. Can we deal with it for several years now? And we've been reporting on the crime, the chaos, the disorder and destruction that are plaguing our city streets for years. And the government just continues to ignore it. And you can see here now, Carney's just continuing on that same trajectory as Trudeau, and he's ignoring the problems.
Right. Because by and large, the federal government is a major trafficker of drugs to
sadly,
the vulnerable people. And Alberta has really taken umbrage with this, because the safe supply that the federal government approves of and that they're dishing out in BC ends up killing Albertans, even though Alberta is taking a recovery-based approach to this, ramping up treatment beds. You know, we'll come get you with the butterfly net if you're terrorizing your family and your community because of your drug addiction. We have a zero tolerance approach to this nonsense. and yet we still have to deal with it because of British Columbia and the federal government's enabling of British Columbia. There are two things that Carney never quite understands just how serious they are: fentanyl and dairy. And those are the two big holdups with the Americans. So I guess until such time as Carney is willing to talk about those things, which I believe is never, we're always going to have a strained relationship with our single largest trading partner and strategic military ally.
Yeah, and speaking of kind of putting your head in the sand of the most pressing issues, he continues to formulate a partnership with Liberal light, allegedly progressively conservative Premier of Ontario, Doug Ford. And so we also have this clip to show you of Ford speaking of the, he calls it, I guess, unpredictableness of Trump, and says that, well, here, let's listen to him himself. I'm going to try not to laugh while he spews his nonsense, and then we'll chat about it.
Donald Trump is so unpredictable. I don't even know if he knows what he's doing tomorrow morning. So let's start focusing on creating that environment.
But is there an acceptance? Is there an acceptance, I guess, from leaders that we'll just have the tariffs?
Again, he's the prime minister will speak on that, but the president is unpredictable. He'll come out with some cockamamie thing tomorrow that we don't even know about.
So
right?
do you think that Mark Carney is being too elbows down in response to that unpredictability?
Not at all. He's doing an incredible job. He's working collaboratively with 12 other premiers and myself, and working as Team Canada. And he's doing a very, very good job, in my opinion. Put in his position, dealing with Donald Trump. Let's stop worrying about Donald Trump. We'll start focusing on Ontario and Canada and all the other provinces and territories.
Dealing with Donald Trump, he literally campaigned on fighting Donald Trump. Carney's campaign was centered against, he campaigned against Donald Trump, not against Pierre Poilievre.
Right.
So
right.
now all of a sudden they're like, oh, well, let's not make it about Donald Trump. It's like, but you spent your entire snap election campaigning against Donald Trump, and now you're caving to, like, where's this Canada First, elbows up, strong Carney we heard so much about during the campaign trail? He's just flopping, just like Ford, right? They're good allies. Flip flop Ford and elbows tucked Carney.
You know, what did we hear from the ambassador last week? The United States ambassador to Canada, that this talk isn't helpful and Trump notices. And so what does Ford do right away? Continue to run his mouth. That's not helpful. Do you even care about the steel sector? Do you even care about the auto sector? Because running your mouth about how unpredictable and crazy Trump is doesn't get you anywhere with Trump. And by the way, I don't think Trump is all that unpredictable. He literally told everybody what they were going to get from him if they didn't deal with certain issues. And fentanyl was one of them. He said, we're going to tariff the daylights out of you unless you deal with fentanyl. They don't like the dairy cartel. And the Liberals refuse to fix any of it. They appointed a fentanyl czar, as you mentioned before, but who is he? Where is he? What has he done? I don't know. I don't know. We still have finding super labs every single week in British Columbia. So, I mean, it's who appointed Doug Ford, the foreign affairs minister?
Yes, exactly. And why is Carney specifically calling on his talks with Doug Ford as some sort of like national strategy that he is utilizing? I don't know what Doug Ford gets right, and the fact that they're just solidifying this partnership between one another, it just further proves how liberal light Doug Ford really is. And I think another element here that goes largely undiscussed by the federal government and obviously Premier of Ontario Doug Ford is immigration and the human trafficking element that the White House continues to point out. Canadians and us here, independent from government funding at Rebel News, we've been saying, you know, this unmitigated mass immigration and all these schemes that follow suit are harming everyday Canadians and the immigrants that came here the right way, who came here without jumping the queue, without scheming the system. And everyone's feeling and getting more and more slighted the longer this continues. And Ontario takes in more than half of all immigrants and, refugees, temporary foreign workers, asylum claimants. Like I use that term kind of broadly to encompass all of those things. But Ontario takes in more than half of all of what the entire country approves into Canada. And we have something like 500,000 people who are here illegally and are set to be deported that the border agency has just, lost track of. And Trump is trying to say, hey, get a grip on this stuff, Canada. We're noticing it. It's trickling down here into the South. What are you going to do about it? And what are they doing about it? Well, they're just deflecting and ignoring the real heart of the problem and trying to align us more with the Europeans, as though that's a closer trading partner than what we have always had historically to the south of us in the United States. It's absolute nonsense. Carney was supposed to be this like
Master
central banker,
negotiator.
master negotiator, master economic advisor, getting us out of the mess that Justin Trudeau created because people didn't realize that he'd actually been whispering in the ear of Trudeau for the last several years. And how are you Liberal voters feeling now? I think, and I'd suspect, pretty slighted.
I don't know why. Well, I do know why, because they have no interest in resolving this problem with the United States. They, I think, for political reasons, as in their own political fortunes, they can't campaign on their own record, so they have to campaign against Trump, right? Like if you had to campaign on the Liberal financial record, fiscal record, you couldn't. And who was whispering in Justin Trudeau's ear during those times? Well, it was Mark Carney. So I think we're just going to get Carney's entire term of being adversarial with Trump and not fixing the problem with Trump. Because if you fix it, then you have to go back at people will then all of a sudden look towards you for the problems that you've created in Canada, as you say, immigration, fentanyl, all those things. Because if you cared about fixing this issue, you wouldn't have Doug Ford leading the communication strategy here, particularly after the ambassador was like, what he says makes everybody real mad. Because you would be sending Danielle Smith, who has a great relationship with the Republicans. They have a lot of like cross-border work on energy issues and agricultural issues. They like her. She speaks directly to them. She goes on their networks, not CNN, not MSNBC. She goes on the networks that they watch to talk directly to them. You would have her leading the communication strategy on this as a premier, but they don't want to resolve this. So why would you have her out there?
Well, Danielle Smith has shown time and time again that she has diplomacy. She's not backing down. Like she's tough, but she has diplomacy. And I don't see any from Carney or other than looking like a lost schoolboy beside Trump during their White House meeting just after he was first elected in May. And he's like kind of cowered beside him, looking up, just like, please pat me on the head, Grandpa. I don't see any of that diplomatic language or negotiation tactics happening, especially from Doug Ford, but also not from Carney at all. And Danielle Smith, I think, has that. She has a knack for it. And I think we would actually be in a worse predicament if it weren't for her efforts
for sure
throughout the spring and trying to get those talks going.
Yeah.